Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to do an introduction and kind of a basic summary of how I use Procreate. Now, a lot of you have been asking me about Procreate, and I know many of you have also just gotten new iPads for Christmas and have probably either purchased Procreate already or are thinking of getting Procreate for yourself. And I just wanted to make this video to give you guys a quick rundown on all of the features that I use every day, and maybe give you guys a little bit of a comparison between Photoshop, because I know that's the main competitor between buying a tablet like this or buying something like a Wacom or a Huion tablet and then using that with Photoshop. So let's get right into it. It looks like we're already here at the first page that you see when you open up Procreate, the gallery. And the gallery is a collection of all of your pieces. For you guys, you may not have nearly as many because I've been using Procreate for about 1.5 years now. But it's a really good way to quickly get an idea of where you've been and how much you've progressed over time. Now, in the gallery, you can do a few things. One thing that you can do once you have a few paintings is you can stack them and group them. So you start off by hitting the select button here, and then you can select a few paintings like this, and then you can click the stack button, and then now X out of that, and now you have a stack of different paintings, and you can use those to kind of keep yourself organized. One reason that I use it is because if you want to duplicate a piece in order to do something kind of crazy, radical, experimental on it, but keep the other one in case you mess it up, you can just swipe to the left and then click duplicate. And then now you have a completely identical piece. You can make all the edits you want in this one, and this one will remain the same way as it was before you duplicated it. And once you've done this a few times, it can get messy to see all of these duplicates. So this is where I use the stack feature a lot. And the main thing that you can do from the gallery is create a new canvas. So to do that, you hit the plus icon here, and then you can go to create custom size, and then you can choose your custom canvas. One thing to note is that the size that you make it will influence your maximum layers. The bigger the canvas size, the less layers that you can have. And the more powerful your iPad, the more layers you can have per your canvas size. Color. So you have the option between P3 wide color or sRGB standard color. Now, how this works is that our eyes can see a lot of colors. The internet can only show us a very small sample of those colors. However, the screens that we use to view the internet can show us a lot of colors, not as many as our eyes can see, but way more than the internet can show us. So, for example, if you have the iPad Pro, it can show you P3 wide color, which is a bigger color gamut, as we call it, and it's bigger than what the internet can show you, but it's not as big as what you can see in real life. So if you make a canvas with P3 wide color, it's going to look very vibrant to you as you're painting. You're going to have more colors to choose from. If you make a canvas with sRGB standard color, you'll be able to use it anywhere and the colors won't change. But if you make one with P3 wide color, and let's say you want to post it to Instagram, what's going to happen is the colors will change and it will look less vibrant to you because the internet compresses everything to sRGB. So I like to keep it in sRGB because I rarely print anything and I focus on my content being viewable on YouTube and Instagram. So keep that in mind when you're creating your new canvases because it's easy to forget. So now that we're done with the gallery, let's actually dig into the inner workings of Procreate. So to do this, I'm going to look at a painting that I'm actually in progress on working on. I'm going to duplicate it so I still have the other one as my backup. And I'm going to use this one to show you guys a little bit of what Procreate can do. Actually, not just a little bit, exactly of what Procreate can do, especially with a focus on what I use it for. So here, the gallery button is the same thing that you've seen before. It just takes you back to the gallery. And if you're in a stack, it'll take you into the stack first. And then you have to hit out again to get into Procreate gallery. And now this button right here with the wrench, this is where your kind of file edit stuff is if you're used to using programs on a desktop computer. So here is where you can add different photos and insert things into your canvas. The one I use the most is insert a photo, and what that will do is allow you to go into your camera roll and then you can pick and choose a photo to add. This is a photo that I'm going to do in an art critique live stream in a few minutes, hopefully. But you can have that there, and once you import a photo, you can scale it up or down, and you can place it. Be careful though, don't place it somewhere like this, because if you place it there, Procreate will crop it and you won't be able to get that information back. So always place it somewhere where you can see the whole thing. And then that's how you place an image. And it's really nice because it's stored as a new layer. And then let's go back into the little wrench menu. Onto the canvas option, you can crop your canvas. Beware that if you do crop it, your Procreate records a video of what you're doing as you're working, and it will stay the same canvas size as your first canvas size. If you crop it, the video will kind of look weird when you export it. So be wary of if you want to crop and resize a lot, your video isn't going to be very enjoyable to watch. Another thing here to note is the canvas information button. This button is very useful. It can give you a lot of information about your canvas. One fun thing to note is the strokes made. It will tell you exactly how many strokes you have done in this painting so far. And so I've done almost 8,000. Why this is kind of interesting to notice is because in order to create the video that Procreate does, it takes a picture of your canvas every time you make a stroke. So this 4-minute and 27-second video that Procreate has created, the speed paint time lapse, if you will, it's based off of almost 8,000 strokes. This tracked time is how long the canvas has been open. So it gives you a rough idea of how long it actually took you to create the painting. It's usually very accurate in the beginning, and then the longer the drawing is, it's usually less accurate because, you know, we always have it open, we're looking at different stuff and things like that. On the share button, here are the different options for you to be able to share it outside. So I use PSD for my patrons, and then I use JPEG or PNG for Instagram. This is really easy because you can also go ahead and, let's see, we want to export to PNG. You can actually go ahead and export it to Google Drive or Discord or Gmail and all of those good things like that. And on the video tab, this is the time-lapse replay. So it'll go ahead and show you the time-lapse if you click that first button. The time-lapse recording is basically toggling on and off if you want that to be happening as you're painting. It has absolutely no effect on the performance, so just leave it on. And export time-lapse video just lets you save the video to your iPad or directly to an online source. And then preferences are where all of your settings are. So the things that I change the most are the pressure curve. I don't really change that often anymore, but this is the pressure curve I ended up getting used to for my kind of heavy-handed approach to painting. I'm trying to use a lighter stroke, but it's still kind of tricky for me to remember. And then the gesture controls. This is where you're going to set up your double tap to undo, where you set up using 4 fingers tap to get rid of the menu icons, where you change your quick menu, which we'll see later, and all of these different things. You can really spend a lot of time here and customize it to your liking. I'm going to skip these 3 icons for now, and I'm actually going to get into the right hand side and look at the 3 tools. So Procreate gives you 3 tools to work with. You have the brush, the smudge tool, and the eraser, and they all work as you'd expect. The brush tool allows you to paint media to the screen. So this is my pencil eraser brush, and you can see I can just paint like so with the brush tool. I can take the smudging tool and then smudge it. Here, decrease the size, smudge it like that. Works pretty well, very well. And then you can take the eraser tool and you can choose a brush and erase. Works great. The cool thing about all of these tools is they all use the same brushes. So if you have a brush that you paint with and you want to keep a very natural look to your drawing when you want to erase, you can use the same brush to erase. Same with the blending tool. If you want to blend with this, let's say you have a particular brush that you are painting with and erasing with, and you want to keep the consistent look to your painting, instead of blending and getting a super digitized perfect blend to it, you can use a rough brush to blend, and it'll look like you're actually painting and using your brush to actually blend your paint instead of this like perfect digital tool, which is something that I really like and enjoy. You can see the blending really keeps this nice texture to it because I'm using a similar rough brush to blend with. Now, if you're interested more in these brushes that I have, you can click to the top right here, and I will There's a video there where I've talked about all of the brushes that I use, mostly in my artwork, along with a link to where you can download my brushes for free. But one thing I will recap from that video is that in the brush menu, you have the brush library, and it's available in every single tool menu, actually. But I always use the brush menu to create new brushes. So they're categorized into these default categories. The imported one won't show up until you've imported a brush. All you need to do that is to click the plus icon and hit import. If you want to create a new category, like the top one where I've created my portraits brush pack, you scroll down, you hit the plus icon, and you can create a new brush category. If you want to create a new brush, you do it by either hitting plus and create a new brush from scratch, or how I like to do it, you find a default brush that you like, swipe to the left, hit duplicate, and now you see with that icon that that brush is now mine, and it's something that I've created and I can mess with it, and I never have to worry about losing everything if it's reset. And now to the layer menu. The layer menu is pretty interesting. There's a lot of things you can do here, which makes it very powerful. One thing is that you can merge all of your layers very easily by just compressing them like this. You don't really have to look for any menus. You just select them all with your hands and compress them. To make new layers, like you just saw me doing, you just hit the plus icon. To delete them, you just swipe and delete. If you want to duplicate them, you swipe and duplicate, or swipe to lock. And if you're tired of doing repetitive actions, you you can select one, and then you can swipe to the right and then group select those. And once you've done that, you can group them or delete them all at once. You can also select on one thumbnail for the layer, and then you have a host of options here like alpha lock, mask, and clipping mask, which work just like in Photoshop, invert, reference, merge down, and combine down. So for example here, if I want to alpha lock my drawing, I can make changes to it based on whatever the preset opacity is for whatever I painted so far. So let's say I want to take this black color and start changing some of the colors. I can do that, and it will only affect whatever I've drawn so far and not create new marks for the painting. But I'll show you a better way than this if you want to actually convert a colored painting to something that's black and white in a few moments. So another thing with the layers is that with every canvas that you make, there will be a default layer called the background color. You can't really get rid of it. All you can do is hide it. And what it does is create the background color. If you click on the thumbnail for it, you can change the color to whatever you want. When you hide it, it basically makes everything look like the default black background for Procreate, which is this nice grid, dark gray background. And it's very helpful I use this to be able to check how well my tones and gradients are flowing. And it's really good for me to tell if the hair is looking well and is has developed layers for the kind of way that I approach hair, which is by drawing a single color, massing for it, and then adding in layers afterwards. So it is a very useful feature to be able to just look at this kind of naked PNG image. One more thing that I forgot with layers is that you can click with 2 fingers and change the opacity, but you can't do it if the layer is empty. So let's do it to one that has paint on it, and then we can change the opacity like that. And once you're done, you can just click on the layers again and you're done. So now let's get into the manipulation tools at the top left. So the first one is adjustments. You can change opacity here, like we've already showed. You have Gaussian blur, which is also something that I use pretty often. What you can do with Gaussian blur is actually, I'll show you by duplicating this layer. I will use the blur tool to blur the top layer. Now, if I can zoom in, I'll show you what this can look like. So since this is only blending the top layer, the bottom layer keeps its sharpness, and you can get this interesting like animated painting effect. A lot of artists like Kushinov, you'll see this effect used in his works, and you'll see this effect in a lot of popular animes as well. And you can recreate this in your own paintings. It's very easy to do, and I think most people know how to do it now, but I'm just going to mention it in case you don't. The other options that are available. I don't really use motion blur, perspective blur, or sharpen, or noise. Liquify is an important one because what you can do with Liquify is you can make little tiny adjustments with your painting that will be a lot more difficult to do if you were to try to piece it together by using the lasso tool. So for example, what I use with the Liquify tool is basically I just push and pull. I don't really go too crazy with anything else with all of these different options. You can have fun with them, but I just like to push and pull, and I just stay on the push icon and change the size depending on what I want to change. So for example, let's say she's looking a little sad and I want to change her expression. I can push and pull her smile and give her this really cute little pursed lip smiling expression. And if I wanted to fix it, I could use the reconstruct brush and just keep going at it and it would fix it back up, just like that. So another adjustment tool, the last two that I actually use are the curves and the hue, saturation, and brightness. So looking at the hue, saturation, and brightness is how I transfer my pink sketches to black and white. I'll actually make a video on this later about why I do this, but if you want to know a good way to convert it back to being black and white, first you take the saturation down and then you slowly bring the brightness down until you feel like you've reached a good dynamic level of darks and whites. So here I think this is pretty good. You don't want to push it all the way down. You just want to leave it to, as soon as it starts to look good to you, that's where you want to keep it. And so here, this is where I would go if I wanted to move forward with the painting, and I would come back with black and white colored brushes, and I would start to affect it and change it to my liking from here. And so from here, I can show you guys the curves tool. And what that does is works just like Photoshop. You can kind of use curves to affect the contrast of your painting. So you can see here, the effects are pretty subtle because this doesn't really have much value change in the face, but you can see here I am having some sort of effect to the painting. It helps more with something that's a lot more dense and rich. But yeah, you can kind of mess up and break your painting if you're not careful. But you can always reset everything back to normal, like that. So talking about this bar to the left, it has two sliders that control all of your tools. So the top one changes your brush size, like that. And the bottom one changes the opacity. So I've been on low opacity and I can bring it up and you can see I can paint much darker. And the cool thing with this is that each tool memorizes its own slider settings. So it's a good way to know that if you have the Apple Pencil 2, for example, it's a good way to tell if after you've tapped, you can look here to see if it was a successful double tap. And you can start to be really accurate with if you've changed to the right tool or not. Works pretty well. The middle button here is something that I use very often because I like to flip the canvas left and right to kind of shake things up and get my brain to see things from a new perspective and check proportions and anatomy and different things like that. Usually when you flip the canvas left and right, it will help you see mistakes and you can go back and forth to check and refine your work. Now let's get into the selection tools. So this is the lasso tool, which I use very, very much. Basically, all you do is use your pencil to select an area. You tap on the little gray circle, and then that area is selected. One thing I don't like about Procreate is I feel like this could be a little bit more clear. I can barely tell the difference of what I've selected or haven't selected, and I think that would be better if they could use something more similar to the marching ants in Procreate in Photoshop. So after you've selected an area, you can use the selection tool here and move things around. And I often use this to change proportions and to move parts of the face when I'm in the beginning sketching phase. Then I'll get out of the action, and what I tend to do is I will use the smudge tool to kind of blend the area that I've messed up and then refine it later. Another thing you can do with the selection tool is you can use an automatic filter which selects based similar to the magic selection tool I think in Photoshop, and you can click areas of tone and it will select those, but I don't really do that kind of stuff here because it's not as advanced as Photoshop and I don't really want to rely on it. There's other options like selecting with a rectangle You can select with an ellipse like that, and you can create some really freeform shapes. Now they have the ability for you to feather your selection as well. Another thing that I want to point out is that you can really work with your selections and make them super accurate. So I can go in here and let's say I want to select her eye. Let's get out of the ellipse tool and select freehand. So I can select her eye like that. And then I can go over here and select her other eye. And before I tap the gray circle, I can click add or remove. So I'm going to click add, but let's say I want to get rid of her iris. I can select again. And before I tap the gray circle, I can click remove, and that will remove the selection. So now I have this unique selection that just doesn't have her iris. It looks pretty scary, but I can move that around. And that can be very useful if you're trying to make some really fine, minute changes to your artwork. So that pretty much concludes my Procreate tutorial. Please feel free to leave any comments if you guys have anything that you would like to say, whether it be things that I missed or things that you would like to see me cover in the future. And if you are interested in more content like this, if you enjoyed it, please subscribe. I will definitely be doing much more content like this in the future. I have a long list of things that people have said that they would like me to cover that I am definitely going to be working on. And I am very excited to get those to you guys. So with that all being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.